I want to now speak to Tal Ofer, European Jewish Parliament member, via Skype. You're in London. And also via telephone, Jonathan Sacherdati, our i24 News London correspondent. Tal, I do want to start with you. We've been speaking a lot on this show throughout the operation about a growing trend of anti-Semitism, which has been perhaps seen as anti-Israel, anti-Zionism, but is actually is anti-Semitism, as I said. And now a new theatre, a new event, a show of anti-Semitism is coming out. A London theatre has backed out of hosting a Jewish film festival, not an Israeli film festival, a Jewish film festival, saying it's backed by the Israeli embassy and hence it cannot support it.
Yes, indeed. Unfortunately, the Tricycle Theatre in North London decided to cancel the UK Jewish Film Festival, which has been taking place there for the past 7 or 8 years. And the reason for them to do it is because of a really, really small donation which the Israeli embassy has been giving this Jewish festival for the past years. So they basically took both an anti-Semitic decision to boycott the festival because it's a UK Jewish festival on the grounds of political grounds because of Israel. But the reason why it is anti-Semitic, and the viewers would like to know, is because under the working definition of anti-Semitism, holding all the Jews as a community responsible or accountable because of the actions of the Israeli government is anti-Semitism and the EU working definition. So whatever they would try to say about the solidarity with Gaza or taking sides in this conflict, when you're boycotting a Jewish event because it's Jewish, right, it's anti-Semitic. There are no other explanations here.
The Tricycle Theatre has stated in a response that it still wants to host the festival if it is no longer funded by the Israeli embassy, citing, of course, the current conflict as the reason for its backing out. That's unacceptable, of course, to the Jewish population in the UK and any festival goers in the UK for that matter.
Yes, of course, it is unacceptable. I think that the organizers of the festival themselves say that it will be unacceptable for them to be dictated how they are going to get the funding for this festival. And in addition to that, what I read in some papers, in The Guardian and in some other papers, is that the theatre itself tried to interfere in the program that the Jewish festival wanted to present. Although that, ironically, there were some movies included which will be quite critical of Israel. So they also artistically try to intervene in the program, which is not something which should be overlooked when we're discussing it. But in terms of funding, if you brought up this issue, the really interesting thing is that this theatre is funded by a lot of great Jewish trusts and foundations and philanthropies. Mm-hmm. And what I've been doing since yesterday morning, I started a campaign contacting a lot of those funders and asking them, would you like to support such a theatre who is boycotting Jews? And one of the top 5 donors already confirmed to me yesterday that they stopped funding with immediate effect, which is a really great result. So this theatre relies on this funding, and if it doesn't want to have Jews or Jewish activities, then it shouldn't have a Jewish money either.
And this festival is due to start in November, so there is quite a lot of time until then. Do you expect this to roll out into the mainstream media in London, or is it still a very Jewish issue, very much part of the Jewish community?
I think it did roll out. I think that the Evening Standard had a piece yesterday, The Guardian, The Independent. So it was pretty much in all the big media, in the big papers, and there was last night on BBC Two a discussion with our leader from the Jewish Leadership Council, Simon Johnson. So it's quite a hot issue, considering the rise of anti-Semitism that we see in Europe, which unfortunately hasn't passed on us here in the UK. So it's still going to top the agenda. And today there is going to be a demonstration outside the theatre by people who are really worried with what's happening here for the Jewish community.
I want to bring Jonathan Sacherdadi into the conversation. Jonathan, we've been speaking periodically throughout the operation, of course, about anti-Semitic trends throughout Europe. We did cite, of course, many times Paris and Brussels as hotspots, and London perhaps as less. But the news coming out of London is probably most worrying now for British Jews, as it increasingly is more frequent than it has been before.
What's happened here with the Tricycle Theatre is a good example of the British style of anti-Semitism. So while we're not necessarily seeing the bigger riots on the street against Jews, we are seeing organisations like the Tricycle Theatre, which is very happy to accept large amounts of UK government money, for example, £725,000 last year from the British state, despite its activities abroad, its so-called illegal wars and the like. But when it comes to a Jewish film festival, they've made it clear that they would not have the festival hosted in the cinema unless the Jewish film festival cut itself off from the Israeli embassy. So I think that many Jews I've spoken to here are of the opinion that this is definitely an anti-Semitic act, despite the protestations of the artistic director into Ruba Singham, who insists that she's not an anti-Semite because she says so. But many Jews seem to be disagreeing. And the 43-year-old artistic director, who's been in place for 2 years apparently, has insisted that she wouldn't have allowed the film festival to take place were it to be accepting money from any side in the current dispute. Those are their words, which is somewhat ridiculous because the idea of Hamas Arts Fund perhaps sponsoring a Jewish film festival really shows how idiotic that particular line of argument is. So when I asked them for an interview to clarify some of these points, I'm afraid they were reluctant to answer any questions, saying they would get back to me. Asking for a sit-down interview, they rejected the request altogether. So it seems that they're definitely worried about the coverage they're getting. And as Tal said just there, this isn't small news. It was in the Evening Standard yesterday where they had a 2-page spread interview with Ruba Singham. Right. It was on Newsnight last night, the BBC's flagship current affairs daily news programme. So this isn't going to just go away. And the Jewish Film Festival seems to have taken a principled position in responding that it wouldn't give up the relatively small amount of money that the Israeli embassy gave it and has always given it in order to put on this Jewish cultural event. And why should it? Why should a theatre in Kilburn dictate to Jews what their relationship with the state of Israel should be? That's what people are saying to me. I spoke to people on the street around the tricycle yesterday, and one Jewish man told me he was in no doubt this was an act of anti-Semitism.
We'll definitely be looking towards the development of that story. Jonathan Sacherdadi, thank you for joining us from London. Tal Ofer, European Jewish Parliament member, thank you also for joining us from London. And we, of course, we will be following that story.